Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Level Up Your Website with Google Analytics. For those of you who don't know us, I'm Amanda Sutt. I'm Creative Director and CEO at Rock, Paper, Scissors, and we're a branding and marketing firm that works with our clients to help them align their message with their brand, their team, and their community so that they're all speaking from one voice to achieve their vision and purpose. And so we've been in the business for over 30 years. We've seen a lot of change and done a lot of changing. Even more so this year probably. But today we have joining us is our senior content marketer, Valerie Kinney.
Good morning, everyone. So before we dive into today's topic, we just wanted to give you a heads up. This is not a presentation. This is not a lecture. It's a conversation. So if you have any questions along the way, you can post them down in the Zoom chat box at the bottom of your screen. And we'll go over those in the Q&A at the end of the presentation. And for people who are catching this after the live broadcast, go ahead and post your questions. We'll definitely follow up with you on any questions or comments you have.
To get started, we do want to define what Google Analytics, so we're all starting on the same page. So Google Analytics is a free tool offered by Google that helps you analyze your website traffic and gain a better understanding of your website visitors so you can evaluate the performance of your marketing, your content, or products, or any of that. So it just kind of gives us a baseline of data.
And a lot of people are like, okay, well, why Google Analytics? Aside from the fact that it is a free tool, we definitely recommend that you use it because it's pretty easy to set up and it provides you with a lot of data to see about what's going on with your brand and how your audience is interacting with the content you post on your website. And then in turn, you can use that information to take the steps necessary to improve your visitors' experiences with your website. As you learn what's working and what's not and where people are spending their time when they do come to your website and a lot more information. So we're going to dive into that in just a second.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of other advantages that I won't go too deep, but it plays well with others because it's been around so long. So it has a lot more integrations that work really nicely.
Okay, so when you log into Google Analytics for the first time, it's going to feel a lot like you're getting a lab report back from your doctor. So you guys have seen those before, and they include a lot of numbers, maybe even graphs and charts or percentages. And there could be a chance that you are not sure if you're healthy or dying. So similarly, there's a lot of numbers and details in Google Analytics that can definitely leave you feeling overwhelmed when you log in the first two times. But this information is important because much like that information on your lab report reveals a lot about your health, what Google Analytics does is tells you what any marketing efforts you are doing, how those reflect on your website. So even if you're not really actively driving people to your website, they're still going to go check it out. And if your site is really hard to navigate or the messaging is confusing, they won't really hang around and it'll leave it looking a little unhealthy. But on the other hand, if your messages and your calls to action are clear, people are going to spend more time on your website. And as Google Analytics is collecting this information, you'll have that data you need to start guiding your next steps for improvements and that sort of thing, especially if something goes wrong later on down the road.
Absolutely. So as we've mentioned, Google Analytics collects a lot of data. So it can be hard to know what information you need versus the information it would be nice to look at. So if you don't look at anything else, looking at these specific numbers will make checking it a lot easier and let you know what is critical. So let's look at each one of these. So we're going to look at users, new users, sessions, number of sessions per user, page views, pages per session, average session duration, and bounce rate. All right, so let's start with new users. So new users are people who visit your website for the first time in a given period. This number tells you about how many people are like first-time users to your website. So we've highlighted on the graph so you can see where that pops up. And new users are kind of like tourists visiting a new place, but some of them love where they visited and they come back, which leads to our cumulative. So we really just want to be looking at the number of unique people that have been to your website.
So then that leads us into users, as Amanda mentioned, and this is a user is a person that visits your website, and that number of users tells us how many people are visiting your website within a given period of time. Each user can visit more than once, and that kind of classifies as separate visits. So when you think about that scenario Amanda just gave you with tourists being like the new users, users are your regulars. plus your tourists and all the repeats that come back. So you have your locals who keep coming back over and over again, and then sometimes you have your one and done tourists.
All right, so sessions. A session is a period of time a visitor is actively engaged with your website, and all the data usage, screen views, events, transactions that are associated with that session. So a session is any visit to your website where a visitor looks at one or more pages as well as events to make a transaction or interaction. So an important note is that Google Analytics defaults session timeout is 30 minutes. So what that really means, if someone comes to your website but is inactive for 30 minutes, i.e. they left their browser window open on your screen because they got a knock on the door and had to go leave. So it'll be a new session if they come back after 30 minutes. So that would account for users, not new users. So that's just really important to know. Also, Google Analytics ends a session at midnight. So if you're doing late night shopping, that could count for 2 sessions. So if you launch a product at 11:59, you might end up with double number of sessions just because people are spanning that midnight hour. So that's just something important to take into consideration. Also, so to kind of put this in perspective, think about the last time you ordered pizza from your favorite restaurant. The session started the moment you landed on their website. Every menu page you looked at, any purchase you made while you're on the site, that's included in a single session. If you closed that window out and then came back to it, that would be a new session. So it just have to be on that the whole time. So that kind of leads into the number of sessions per user. And we're going to just lean into this pizza metaphor. So this is the average number of sessions per visitor given during a given time frame. So if you're looking at this for either like a month or a week. So let's use a month example. So if somebody buys pizza from you every Friday, so over the course of the month, they would have 4 sessions per user because they're repeating back on that weekly basis. Whereas you maybe on the flip side, if you are like a payroll service and somebody's coming in to, actually process payroll and they do it twice a month, that would be 2 sessions per user per month. So it's just looking at how often people are coming back to the website. So that's giving us an idea of, do you have a website that has a lot of repeat people, or is it just coming one and done for information?
All right, so the next thing we're looking at is page views, and that refers to the total number of pages viewed on your site during that given session of time. Repeated page views of a single page are counted within this number. So to, again, give you a kind of real life example of what's going on, we're gonna use shoe shopping. So it's similar to when you go shopping for new shoes, the number of new shoes you've tried on, that is your page views.
We're going to keep leaning into shoe shopping now. So the number of pages per session is our next one. So this is getting into the average number of pages viewed during a session on your site. So that includes repeated views of a single page. So pages per session also refers to the average page depth. We can get deeper into that if you need to know about that. And it's calculated by dividing the number of page views by the total number of sessions. So with our shoe shopping metaphor, it's the pages per session, or it's the average number of shoes customers come in and when they try on. And we would count if they tried on a pair at the beginning, tried on 3 other pairs, went back to that first pair, we would say it was 5. So pages equals shoes in our metaphor. All right.
So that leads us to average session duration, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the average length of time visitors are spending on your site, and that is calculated by dividing the total number of time spent on the site by the total amount of users. So if you had 60 users that spent a total of 120 minutes on your site, then that average session duration for that period of time would be 2 minutes per user. So if we're sticking with that shoe shopping scenario, the amount of time you're in a store is your session duration.
All right, bounce rate. Your bounce rate is the percentage of single page sessions, that's keyword, single page sessions, in which the visitor did not interact with the web page. So for example, this could be a visitor who typed in your website URL into the browser by mistake and immediately closed the window when they landed on your site. However, in some instances, you might get bounced simply because someone came to your website to look for information like your phone number that was on your homepage. And so then we might be okay with a higher bounce rate if your site is set up for that. So bounce sessions have a duration of 0 seconds. The lower your bounce rate, the better. So now you can decide to go to another store. So for example, if you decide to go to another store to look for shoes, but as soon as you walk in, you realize that it was a furniture store, you technically bounce in, you bounce out. You walked out because it wasn't the right place. So that's kind of explaining what that starts to look like. All right, so now that you kind of understand what those data points are, data points by themselves don't really help. You need to be able to compare them to something. So when we're talking about the critical data you should look at, we also want to mention the ways you compare the data. So you can set custom ranges, which is especially helpful if you're looking at how specific campaigns might compare to another one. The default in Google are to compare to either previous periods or previous years, but you can completely customize the time frame to be whatever you need them to be. And when you're looking at the data, we typically look at month over month as opposed to year over year. So that's going to show us, are you growing or are you retracting? And when we can do that comparison, that starts to tell us what's working and we don't need to do anything, or if something broke. So for instance, if all of a sudden your website's session duration dramatically dropped off, people aren't spending as much time on your website, we're going to want to go in and see, okay, why are they spending less time on it? It could be some buttons are gone, or maybe you had a video on there that people used to watch and it's not linking properly. So it gives us a better idea of how to start to troubleshoot that. You can also look at year over year ends up being probably the most important way that we want to compare data, because it gives us a more accurate view of seasonal patterns, as well as it tells you whether traffic is coming to your website, and if not, helps per that example I just gave you. So it's worth noting that year over year data is typically more accurate than month over month in trying to understand what the data is telling you. Maybe, for example, so if you run a retail business and your website stats might look drastically different from October to November, because November, you're getting your holiday season. And especially if you run a campaign each year for your Cyber Monday specials. So, however, comparing the period cycle of your Cyber Monday campaign to 2018 to 2019 can help you see whether your efforts have helped generate the traffic and conversions you want to make the adjustments for your 2020 strategy. So that's why it really helps. You want to look at year over year more often, just because it can change a lot. You know, a lot of the businesses, we work with a lot of service providers, you know, it's very seasonal. It's very, you know, paired to even the school calendar and when school's in session, when parents are taking off, all of that. So that's why it's really important. Our summers can look very different from fall. So you might have a big drop off in that traffic and nothing's actually broken from month over month. It's just that you have some seasonal pattern that you're taking into consideration. So really think about what comparison is going to give you the best snapshot. But those are the two, sometimes month over month and sometimes year over year, mainly year over year. All right, so we want to get into the ABCs of Google Analytics. And this is getting into how did people find your website and has it changed? So we're going to look at acquisitions, behaviors, and conversions.
All right, so first up is acquisition, and this refers to how visitors arrived at your website. So this helps you understand how people are finding you and can also help you make adjustments to your strategy. So you can draw in as many visitors as possible through a lot of different methods. Common acquisition channels include search engines like Google, social media platforms like Facebook, referrals that would come in from other websites. So if you have your website listed on your local Chamber of Commerce's website, that could be a referral, or any other website business listing type of thing. And then there are paid search acquisition channels like Google Analytics, or Google Ads, excuse me, and emails, among a lot of different others. So when you think of acquisition, it's like our lovely little graphic here, that magnet that's drawing the needle out of the haystack. That is what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. All right, then behavior. This one is fun. You do need some data. You cannot necessarily look at behavior if you just launched your website, but we might look at it a couple weeks afterwards. But so behavior reports in Google Analytics help you understand what visitors do and where they spend time once they've reached your site, including which pages they visit and any actions they take on your site. So two things worth paying attention to here are the pages and the behavior flow report. And right here, we're showing you the behavior flow report because it's just really cool to look at. But I want to touch, before I get too nerdy on behavior flow, let's talk about page reports. It's found under site content. It's not necessarily anything very visual, but it gives you a quick look at the top pages of your website based on traffic, page views, unique page views, average page, time on page, entrances, about all these things, percentage exit. And the page report helps you understand the types of content your audience is interested in, which will help you build out future content strategies for websites, for updates and improvements. You look at that and you'll go, yeah, people are going to the pages I wanted them to. Or we look at it and go, hey, our products page, nobody's going to that. And then it's like, okay, why aren't they going to that? Gives us a chance to go decide what do we want to be able to fix with that. All right, so let me get now to behavior flow because this is fun. So this report provides a visual breakdown of the path visitors commonly take on your website from the first page they land on to the last page they see before they leave your site. So from this report, we can quickly spot any areas where you may need to make improvements to keep visitors around longer or provide clearer calls to action. So you'll see here the left column of the white boxes, it's showing the top 6 pages that people are coming in. And then that light blue is doing the flow into the page that they're starting on. So they go from, this basically is going to the home page. And then from the home page, it lists 6 other pages that people are going to. But this red bar is telling us how many people are leaving from that. So the site that we did a snapshot of had an 81% bounce rate, and that red bar is showing us that 81% of people who are leaving after they come to the homepage. But the people that are going beyond that, we're seeing that they have a lot less drop off once they come into it, and we get to see where people are going to understand what are they interested in. Like, for example, if you had a retail store, you could just literally watch customers come in and, are they going to the right product tables? Are they looking at things? You can see that. With a website, you can't. However, you look at your behavior flow, you get an idea of what is that customer experience.
All right, so that leads us to conversions. And a conversion is any activity that's completed online as well as offline that is important to the success of your business. So this could include a completed sign-up form for a newsletter, which that would typically be classified as something called a goal conversion, because that's just a goal you're wanting to reach, is getting more people to sign up for your newsletter. Or it could be a purchase, so that would be considered a transaction. Sometimes people refer to it as an e-commerce conversion. So conversions are vital because this is how you can track new marketing efforts to see what's working and what's worth keeping, or what you need to move on away from and start doing something new. A lot of times these can, and this gets really deep into some information and how Google classifies this stuff. Conversions can be classified as macro conversions, which are that completed purchase transaction type of process, whereas the micro conversions are those activities like an email sign up. So that's indicating a user might be interested in what you have to offer, but they're not ready to make that purchase yet.
All right. So before you can determine if your efforts are working, you do need to determine what success looks like and your goals for the period, whether it's a month, a quarter, or a year. So once you have that set, you'll know what to pull in reporting. And then you can look at the measurements and begin adjusting as needed. So before we even dive too deeply into that, we'll do a quick refresher on goals, because that's so important.
So if you've been in some of our previous webinars this year, you probably recall this information. We're big fans of Michael Hyatt's SMART-ER goal setting system. So that takes the SMART goals a few steps further, and it really helps you improve your chances of reaching your goals. So when you're setting SMART-ER goals, you're using this acronym to look at each goal to see if it is specific enough to focus and direct your energies, measurable so you can keep track of your progress, actionable with a clear initiating verb that prompts specific activity, risky enough to leverage that natural tendency to rise to challenges, time keyed so you're prompted to know exactly when to act, and it needs to be exciting enough to inspire and harness the power of your intrinsic motivation. If you can't get excited about a goal, what's the point of working towards it? And then lastly, it needs to be relevant within the overall context of your life, and in this case, your business. Mm-hmm.
And so once you have your goals in place, you need to set some type of check-in period. Usually we recommend monthly check-ins to see how your efforts are progressing, where you might need to make a few tweaks in order to stay on track with your goals. And this becomes so important because we talked about earlier, it's very overwhelming going into Google Analytics and looking at what you could do. Same thing with marketing. There are so many options that you have that taking this first step, which is why we're repeating it, and we repeat it all the time, of understanding what you want your website to do, because what your website does for your business might be very different than the business down the street from you. So understanding the purpose that it serves and what those goals look like become really important. But that being said, all websites can help you measure your business. It just might be measuring something different.
So as you're taking that time to review and measure your progress, you need to make note of those areas you need to that might need improvement so that you can start pivoting your plans. So this can mean dedicating more time to optimizing your website for search engines if you're not getting that type of traffic, or you might need to create a link building strategy so you're attracting visitors from a variety of different areas.
And so once you know what you need to improve, you want to set priorities by determining what is critical, aka the thing you need to do right away, and what priorities are lower on that totem pole, such as tasks that can be helpful improvements but are not 100% necessary right now. So then you can plan out your updates according to this and how many resources, i.e. time, connections, money, to be able to make updates in the coming months. And we usually recommend, you're going to always have something urgent. There's something broken, there's malware, there's something that needs to be fixed. But it's always good if every month you can also do something that's important that isn't necessarily something broken, so that you don't get to a point where those important things become priorities later down. So that kind of gets you up in a formula when you're looking at all this to go, okay, what is the broken thing? What is the thing you need to fix that would be nice to fix?
And then finally, you need to determine who's going to own this and kind of take the lead. And if you've got a team, delegate tasks out to your different team members. That way, one person's not getting bogged down with all of this. It's a lot easier to make those updates and get the critical stuff taken care of. And then maybe you work toward it would be nice if we could do this task later on. And also don't forget to set your deadlines for when the work needs to be completed, so that you know when you're checking in on your progress, these things were completed, but we had to push one thing back. So that's going to affect what you thought your numbers might be. Versus if you got everything completed on time and you can even maybe work ahead. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be a nice world to live in?
We're working on it every day. All right, so as we're closing out on our time today, we want to open up the floor for some questions. So please feel free to post any questions in the chat. Hey, there we go. Thanks, Chris. And we'll go through and start answering those. And we collected some ahead of time. We'll go through. But let's start, Chris, with yours. So question is, does Google counter scrubbers or spiders towards web traffic? Also seeing a major bump in international traffic. Woo, that's a lot. 700 to 1,000% increase this year compared to last year. How much of an impact should that have on considering these strategies? Okay. Yes. I think those are the big answer. So does it counter scrubbers and spiders towards the site? Google is measuring everything. And you can usually see this when you start to look in acquisition to see where people are coming from. So it does, it's never perfect. And an important thing to also take into consideration, and I'm going to go a little bit more technical on this. So Google doesn't have full permission for everybody that's on the site. So when you start to look at data and like demographic breakdown, there is a number that shows a percentage of how much of those people they actually know. And it's usually a lot smaller of a number than you think it would. So sometimes it's only like 10% of people they actually have specific data on. So it might not even be a good number set. We can make numbers say whatever they need to. So just know that that's part of it. And you want to know if you're getting a lot of spiders towards the website and all of that, because that's also a sign that you're getting listed on other sites, or there's something broken, or you got picked up. Like, you actually want to know that, because that's something that you want to change. So then back to your international traffic. So it's good and bad. You have more people coming to your page, and what I always like to do is like really simplify the Google algorithm. It is way more complicated than this. But there's two things that you want to think about when you're thinking about web strategy. Is one, you want to drive people to your website, and then you want to update your website. And if you're doing those two things, Google's job is to make sure they're providing relevant information. And they need to know that a website that they're suggesting to somebody is going to provide them the answer that they need to. Because if Google can't provide answers to people searching for content, people are going to stop using Google. So Google wants to make sure that they're sending to quality. So with the international bump up, I would take that as a good thing, because you're, going back to that, more people are going to the website. So that's helping your algorithm get, post you higher in that. No, it might not be good data and you probably do want to clean it up. But from the other flip side, I take it as a little bit of a gift. It's giving you a little bit more traffic. But I'd be curious to look at the acquisitions and see where they're coming from, what countries they're coming from, what pages they're going, and if they're being led from a previous site. Because if they're referral traffic from another site, that would be the place that I would start and start to investigate. And you can look at all of that through Google Analytics. So Eric asked, how could you review the difference between page views and pages per session? Absolutely. So page views is the total number of pages that have been viewed during that period. Typically, we look at websites for a month. So if we're looking at that, it's saying that, and I'm going to flip back because I think it'll be a little bit easier to show you numbers. Give me a second. There we go. So if we look at this slide, so total page views is 1,400 page views. So that's how many pages of this website were looked at in the course of a month. But if we go to pages per session, it's telling us how many pages the average person looked at. So we had 497 users look at 1,400 pages. So we do a little math there. And if we divide that, that's actually how we get the 2.67. So the average number of pages that a person looks at the sessions, we should divide this 1433 divided by 537, and that gives you the 2.67. So it's all math, and they do the math for you. Another really great thing, because I know like it's just a lot that we kind of dump on people as we're going through this. When you're in Google Analytics, it has little hover buttons that will tell you the definition of things, so you don't have to remember. I mean, we would love for you to go rewatch this webinar all the time, but we know that's not realistic. But it's all built in there, so just look for the little info buttons to be reminders of what that is. All right, I'm going to flip back to the questions we had. Give me 1 second. One question was, I've heard of Google Analytic Academy. Would it be worth time to go through some of the courses? The answer is, if this is really important to your business, yes. Like if you're pushing, especially more like e-commerce, or if you're doing some appointments, if everybody's having to really use your website as a storefront, if they're not dealing with your business as much, that would be a really good thing to start investing in. It's free, so it's just time, but a good resource. Okay, Jennifer, great question. Example showed a bounce rate of 81%. How important is bounce rate? It is important. Each company is going to be a little bit different, and depends on your website strategy and how it's set up. I don't know what we actually pulled for this one. Typically, what I'm looking at from a bounce rate, usually it's anywhere between like 45 to maybe 70%. So this one's a little bit higher than I would like. It would be something that I would address on this one, saying, oh, that's getting a little high. Why aren't people staying with the website? So I want to pull, Chris, your example. If you have a whole bunch of international people coming and they're just hitting one page and leaving, that could be a really high bounce rate for something like that. But if they're coming and they're staying, it's good. So it's not good or bad, but it's telling us a different level of story of like how, are we getting tire kickers, or are we actually getting people to look through the website? So you also always want to take this and compare your marketing effort, your lead generation, and compare it to your sales. If you're getting enough sales in and your bounce rate's super high, don't worry about it. It's not going to make a difference. But if you're not getting your sales where you need to, okay, maybe that's something we need to look at. Why aren't we getting quality people? So bounce rate is telling us about the quality of the visitor that's there. Okay. Oh, I just answered the next question, which was a good bounce rate or not. There we go. So that's 45 to 70, which can seem really high, but I mean, just think about foot traffic at like stores. There's a lot of window shoppers who come in and who don't buy, or people car shopping. You might go to a lot of different dealers before you buy from just one of them. So that number is, it's not low. All right, here's another one. I keep seeing others listed an acquisition channel in my acquisition report. What does that mean? Ah, good, okay. So let me rephrase that now. I understand what it is. They see the term "quote unquote" other as a listed option, and that means they typically we don't know. So it could be an unmarked site that's not indexed. So there's a lot of different reasons for it. It's just good to make sure that that's not too big. I mean, unless you're all in, dark web and you want to be there, then that's fine. But more often than not, just want to make sure that number's not too high.
Sometimes it can also play into if people have certain privacy settings or
Absolutely.
searching in incognito browsers.
Yeah, incognito is a big piece of that. All right, here we go. Trying to improve areas is overwhelming. Where do I start prioritizing? So this would actually go back to my comment. Go look at what your sales goals are. That really is going to help you decide, and going back to what are your business goals? What do you need to have happen? And then you work backwards from there to be able to figure that out. Can bounce rate be reduced by doing remarketing, or only options is to optimization of the pages? There's a lot of different strategies. So you can do both. You can, remarket those pages. I would also just look at, we go to that behavior flow chart and see where people are coming in. And like, if that homepage had such a high bounce rate, that's why I like having some not clean data so we can talk about this. I would immediately go to that homepage and say, is there a clear call to action? Do people know what to do next? So optimizing the page is usually the cheapest and easiest way to look at that before running a whole campaign on it. So that would be a look at, and I say this all the time, be lazy as marketers. Do the least amount of work for the most amount of results. There are so many things that we could be doing, and we can waste our time. And that's usually what we end up doing. We waste a lot of time on things that aren't actually helping us provide those results. Hence why we keep talking about setting goals, because you can go down rabbit holes on all of this. All right, last question, unless anybody posts in the chat, is to start, should I focus on getting users to my site or making the site sticky so they stay and make a purchase? All right, so that one, it really depends on your goals. If you have an informational site, yeah, you still do want it to be sticky, but that would be more focused on getting users there. But if you're doing a transactional website, then definitely you want to make sure that they go from the homepage to the product page to the purchase, or the homepage to the register page, or whatever that process, homepage to, book an appointment, whatever that mix should be. So it really just, once again, goes back to your goals. You can make better decisions about what your website needs to do if you actually understand what goals are going on. So, if you guys have any more questions, just shoot them to us. We're happy to answer them. This is deep, and as we said, there's a lot of rabbit holes that can go from that can happen. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to pop them in. But we do want to do a quick poll with everybody who's still on to find out. We're starting to do our planning for next year and what you guys want to find out about. So you should have a poll popping up. Let us know what you're interested in, or if, come up afterwards, if there's anything else that you guys would like us to create some content and resources on. We are open, especially right now. We're figuring out what you guys want to know for next year. We have some ideas and plans, but I would much rather know what's interesting for you guys. And just so you guys know, we will be up in December. We'll announce our webinar schedule probably for the first couple months. We are going to take December off from webinars, but we'll have a big old newsletter with a whole bunch of recaps in there. So please sign up at 123shoot.com if you want to, in the bottom right corner of our homepage, if you want to make sure you get that. And then, oh, Jennifer question. Do you offer a website service evaluation for a fee? Yes, we do website audits. We could definitely come in, we'll go through, do a deep dive and do a report back to you. Happy to do that. And then we have a lot of other programming around that. If you're an in-house marketer, we can do audits and evaluation. We've shifted a lot to be able to help you guys serve through that. So just let us know, reach out to, here, I'll put up our email. So if you just send an email to help@123shoot, just let us know, and we'll be back online with webinars in January. So thanks, guys.